to build a great border wall to stop illegal immigration.
From the deserts of Arizona to the bustling cities of California, the U.S. Mexico border wall is a symbol of hope, fear, and everything in between. For some, it's a lifeline for national security. For others, it's a scar on the landscape of unity. But how did it all begin? And why is it still the center of one of America's most heated debates? Let's take a closer look. Before we begin, please subscribe to join us on this story. The origins of the border wall. The story of the U.S. Mexico border wall begins long before steel barriers and surveillance drones. It takes us back to the 19th century, when the aftermath of the Mexican-American War carved out the boundary lines we know today. At first, the border was little more than an imaginary divide, unpatrolled and unrestricted, a place where cultures mingled and trade flowed freely. But as the 20th century dawned, this invisible line began to take physical shape. Barbed wire fences were erected, not to stop people, but to keep cattle from wandering across the line. These early barriers spoke more of practicality than politics. However, times were changing, and so were the priorities. The Mexican Revolution, the two world wars, and growing concerns about weapons smuggling, espionage, and refugees pushed the U.S. government to tighten control over its southern boundary. By the late 20th century, the stakes had shifted dramatically. It was no longer just about controlling livestock or managing small-scale smuggling. The 1980s saw a surge in drug trafficking and illegal immigration, turning the border into a flashpoint of national debate. In response, President Bill Clinton launched Operation Gatekeeper in the 1990s, a pivotal moment in the wall's history. This initiative didn't just strengthen border security, it changed the game entirely. For the first time, modern barriers, constructed from military surplus steel, were put in place to physically deter crossings in key areas. It was a bold move, but it was only the beginning. What started as localized fencing would soon become a sprawling, controversial megaproject, sparking debates over security, human rights, and environmental impact that still rage today. The question remains, was this the first step toward a more secure border, or the foundation of a larger, more divisive issue? Evolution through administrations. The U.S. Mexico border wall is more than a physical structure. It's a testament to shifting political priorities, shaped and reshaped by every administration in modern history. From Clinton to Biden, each presidency has left its indelible mark on this contentious project. President George W. Bush brought the wall into the national spotlight with the Secure Fence Act of 2006, a landmark bill that authorized hundreds of miles of barriers. At the time, the focus was clear: strengthen the border to combat illegal immigration and curb drug trafficking. This act set the stage for the large-scale infrastructure that followed. Then came President Obama, who, despite his progressive image, oversaw the completion of 649 miles of fencing. By 2011, the border was declared essentially complete, with barriers that combined pedestrian fencing and vehicle obstructions. But was this the end of the wall's story? Not even close. When Donald Trump took office, he didn't just inherit the border wall. He turned it into a rallying cry. His promise to build a big, beautiful wall and have Mexico pay for it was a central theme of his campaign. But the reality proved far more complex. During his presidency, 452 miles of barriers were constructed. However, much of this work replaced outdated sections rather than extending the wall. And Mexico footing the bill? That never happened. Instead, funds were redirected from U.S. military budgets, sparking controversy over national priorities. Under President Biden, the wall's future remains uncertain. Construction was initially paused, but growing political and migratory pressures have forced new segments to move forward. Each administration has viewed the wall through a different lens: security, economics, or political symbolism. But one thing is clear: the debate over the border wall is far from over. The modern wall. The U.S. Mexico border wall has evolved far beyond steel and concrete. In today's world, it stands as a technological fortress, a product of the 21st century's most advanced surveillance capabilities. But is this high-tech evolution a groundbreaking solution or an expensive illusion of security? Let's talk about what's actually happening at the border. The wall now incorporates facial recognition cameras, underground sensors, and drone surveillance. Every mile of this barrier is armed with cutting-edge tools designed to monitor, detect, and respond in real time. Underground sensors are programmed to identify tunneling activity, while cameras equipped with artificial intelligence scan for movement day and night. And let's not forget the drones, soaring above to provide an eye in the sky for miles around. But this kind of security doesn't come cheap. To date, over $18 billion has been spent on the border wall project, and the meter is still running. Supporters argue that this investment is critical to safeguarding the nation from illegal crossings and drug smuggling. They point to statistics showing reduced crossings in areas where advanced systems are in place. Yet critics see it differently. They question the wall's effectiveness, pointing out that sophisticated smuggling networks are finding ways around these barriers, using tools as simple as ladders or as advanced as industrial equipment to breach sections of the wall. Some even call it a waste of taxpayer money, arguing that resources could be better spent on immigration reform or economic aid to reduce the need for migration in the first place. So, is the modern wall a marvel of engineering or a misstep in border policy? One thing is certain: the wall is no longer just a physical divide. It's a symbol of America's ongoing struggle to balance security, economics, and humanity at its borders. Environmental and human impacts. Let's start with the environment. Conservationists have long sounded the alarm, warning that the wall doesn't just divide nations, it disrupts nature. Take the jaguar and the ocelot, two majestic and endangered species. Their habitats span the U.S. Mexico border, but the wall is a nearly insurmountable obstacle, cutting off migration routes and isolating populations. The consequences: increased inbreeding, shrinking genetic diversity, and an accelerated path to extinction. And it's not just big cats. The wall impacts over 100 species, from birds to butterflies, jeopardizing ecosystems that have thrived for centuries. Then there's the human cost, a far graver consequence. By fortifying certain areas of the border, the wall forces migrants to take more dangerous routes through deserts and mountains. These unguarded regions are treacherous, with extreme temperatures and vast, desolate landscapes. Since 1994, over 5,000 migrants have died attempting to cross these unforgiving terrains. Families torn apart, lives lost to dehydration, exposure, or smugglers' false promises. For many, the wall is not a deterrent but a deadly gamble. Critics argue that these tragic outcomes are proof that the wall fails at its core purpose: to create security. Is security worth the lives of endangered animals or desperate people fleeing violence and poverty? Supporters, on the other hand, maintain that a secure border is non-negotiable, framing these losses as unfortunate but necessary collateral. So we're left with a haunting question: is the border wall truly protecting lives, or is it destroying them? Biden's dilemma. Enter President Biden. On day one, he paused wall construction, yet the controversies persist. In 2023, Biden restarted construction in response to a surge in crossings, waiving over 20 environmental laws in the process. Was this a reluctant move or a political necessity? Critics call it a betrayal. Supporters see it as pragmatic. The hidden truth behind the wall. But here's the most provocative twist. The wall is not just about immigration, it's about control. From private companies profiting billions to covert surveillance capabilities, the wall is as much about power as it is about protection. And with whispers of secretive contracts and advanced spying tech, one must ask, is the wall protecting us, or is it watching us? The U.S. border wall is more than just a line in the sand. It's a story of ambition, division, and the search for security. What do you think? Is the wall a step toward safety or a barrier to unity? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Please subscribe to join us on the next incredible stories.